Welcome to Alter. I'm your host, Nicole Meline. This podcast explores the practice of transformation as a conversation between hustle and flow. Altering, changing, growing, becoming, and altering, offering, surrendering, opening to divine conspiracy. It's the dance of the leader, athlete, artist, entrepreneur, committed not just to optimal expression, but to exceptional being. So here are adventures in alignment and conspiracy, awake to all the grit, dirt, and complexity of our world, alert to the graces that come alongside the struggle, the hustle, a cocktail of soul food, new rhythms, and street wisdom, encouragement, an infusion of courage for the moments you need it most. I'm your host, Nicole Meline. Let's alter together. My friends, welcome to Alter. I am going to initiate a new type of episode today. I hope that this will become a series that I will introduce and kind of thread through our conversations together. I'm not quite sure on a name yet. I think Sage's Stage was what came to me this morning, and it might be a little too cute. But this idea of creating a stage for a sage, for a teacher. I want to introduce you to some of the teachers that have been very integral to my own development and just really give you an opportunity to dive into their work. I'm hoping that these episodes focused, these Sage's Stages, will really invite you, will just kind of tantalize you to dive into these teachers, poets, writers, thinkers, thought leaders, but I think very importantly, not necessarily linear thinkers, very importantly, poets in one way or another. They might call themselves poets, they might not. I'm kind of riffing right now, but come with me. I think that poetry is a mode rather than a genre. So the poetic is that moment when language itself becomes opaque. It's not just a vehicle of meaning. It's not just transparent. We don't just see through it to a meaning, but actually the words themselves take on a sensuality that actually alerts us to the layers and the matter, the stuff of our world. So I'm not going to stay in this esoteric realm for very long. I want to really pull us into our senses, and I cannot think of anyone who does that more effectively than Mary Oliver. And in part because she has just passed, she's transitioned, she has entered the mystery, right? In these last few months, I want to start with her. I want to begin with her and give you an introduction to her work. And if it's been a little while, maybe you know her work well. And I just want to read to you from her incredible work as an invitation or a reminder. And if nothing else, her work plunges us into our world. One of my favorite lines of hers is, "My work is loving the world." And I'm sure that you will think about all the ways that she alerts you to your own. So let's begin with an opening poem of hers. This poem is called Moments, and it is from her collection Felicity, a recent one from 2016. There are moments that cry out to be fulfilled, like telling someone you love them, or giving your money away, all of it. Your heart is beating, isn't it? You're not in chains, are you? There is nothing more pathetic than caution when headlong might save a life, even possibly your own. Do you see why we have to start with her? I wrote a little something in response to Mary's death a couple months ago that I also want to read as a preface to her work, because it gives you a little bit of an introduction to what is precious to me about her work. Not her work itself is so essential, I think, to our moment, and especially to our ecological crisis, which we're facing. But her story itself has also just been deeply inspiring to me. She is probably the most read American poet, the most beloved American poet of our time. Not many people read poetry. William Carlos Williams famously said, "You can't get the news from poems," and yet people die every day for lack of what is found there, right? And I'm hoping that some of these stages that particularly spotlight poets will invite you into poetry and into the way that it can open you to mystery. But Mary was this known and beloved American poet, probably the most read American poet of her time, maybe next to Billy Collins. But one of the things that really struck me about her is that she was the opposite of a celebrity in the way that she carried herself. There was this, unsurprising as we get into her work, down to earthness to her. I don't think she wore makeup. She was, sort of casual and comfortable in her dress. There was almost like a kind of crass matter-of-factness to her, which I love, which is such a contrast to the, tenderness of her work, the fragility and the vulnerability of so many of her poems, the way that she opens her heart and the way that she asks for yours. And yet she had this kind of swagger and attitude that had nothing to do with showmanship. And I think it was very rooted in her journey toward her becoming, toward who she became. She followed the work. And I'm sure at the end of her life, she wanted for nothing materially. I'm sure that she made fantastic royalties off of her very, very popular poems. And yet she chose to live very simply. Again, there was nothing showy about her, and there was a kind of rawness. She followed the work where it led. And in her early years, there was a lot, you could tell that there was kind of a lot of mystery and unknowing and choosing a path that didn't make a lot of sense. She was a smart young woman. She could have gone and worked at any, corporation and climbed a ladder and gotten all of those outward validations of success. And instead, she just created this kind of humble, small, naturally rooted life in poetry, which was a life of poverty. We might call it that. I'm sure she would describe it as a life of great richness. So I'll start out with just this little piece that I wrote the morning I woke up to the news of her passing. Mary, how could you have known when you moved to the frozen tip of Cape Cod in your 20s to be wintered, mentored by conversation with wilderness, to let the soft animal of your body bow with the wind, when you went off to love wildly the thing you loved, that your words, simple, stark enough to hold the ache of our complexities, would save, startle, start 1,000 quiet revolutions. You just did your work, which was reintroducing us to the beloved, to our belovedness. You wandered over a landscape colonized by empire, violence, industry, refertilized it with wonder. How can you have said all you have to say? You haven't. your words generate, for reimagining our economy, for rediscovering the new world there at the tip of Cape Cod, for seeing it new, for languaging grateful satisfaction and thirst. Sister, thank you. The soil, the sky you sang, welcomes you. Another favorite line of Mary's is, attention is the beginning of devotion. Her poetry is a poetry of radical attention, both to the world and also to the creative process. So this is a little prose piece that she wrote, which I think is also just an introduction to her mindset. I had to go out into the world and see it and hear it and react to it before I knew at all who I was, what I wanted to be. Wordsworth studied himself and found the subject astonishing. William Wordsworth, one of the Romantic poets, definitely one of her predecessors. He was obsessed with the natural world and his heart. Actually, what he studied was his relationship to the harmonies and also the discords of the natural world. That's what created the excitement. I walk all day across the heaven-verging field. And whoever thinks these are worthy, breathy words I am writing down is kind. Writing is neither vibrant life nor docile artifact, but a text that would put all its money on the hope of suggestion. Come with me into the field of sunflowers, a Wordsworth, is a better line than anything you will find here. And the sunflowers themselves, far more wonderful than any words about them. I walked all one spring day upstream, sometimes in the midst of the ripples, sometimes along the shore. My company were violets, Dutchman's breeches, spring beauties, trilliums, bloodroot, ferns rising so curled one could feel the upward push of the delicate hairs upon their bodies. My parents were downstream, not far away, then further away, because I was walking the wrong way, upstream instead of downstream. Finally, I was advertised on the hotline of help, and yet there I was, slopping along happily in the stream's coolness. So maybe it was the right way after all. If this was lost, let us be lost always. The beech leaves were just slipping their copper coats. Pale green and quivering, they arrived into the year. My heart opened and opened again. The water pushed against my effort, then its glassy permission to step ahead touched my ankles, the sense of going toward the source. I do not think that I ever, in fact, returned home. That was the introduction to her book, Upstream, which is it's prose pieces that are reflections on her journey as a poet, as a writer, and just an adventurer. This is a word that kind of came to me this year, a beyonderer, right? Someone who's always getting lost. So let us all be lost always. Another piece from that book. It is 6 a.m. and I am working. I am absent-minded, reckless, heedless of social obligations, etc. It is as it must be. The tire goes flat. The tooth falls out. There will be 100 meals without mustard. The poem gets written. I have wrestled with the angel, and I am stained with light, and I have no shame. Neither do I have guilt. My responsibility is not to the ordinary or the timely. It does not include mustard or teeth. It does not extend to the lost button or the beans in the pot. My loyalty is to the inner vision, whenever and howsoever it may arrive. If I have a meeting with you at 3:00, rejoice if I am late. Rejoice more if I do not arrive at all. There is no other way work of artistic worth can be done, and the occasional success to the striver is worth everything. The most regretful people on earth are those who felt the call to creative work, who felt their own creative power restive and uprising and gave it neither power nor time. You know what's easier than writing a poem or wrestling through new chords or staring down that blank canvas? Going out to get mustard. That's what's easier. And it's also kind of necessary, right? People in the household want mustard on their sandwich this week. And there's a pile of laundry. And there's so much that needs doing. And it has with it the small satisfaction of having gotten done. It feels good to need mustard and to go out and to get mustard and to cross that off of your to-do list. And so often those small, tiny, little satisfactions that are in reality distractions keep us from the soul deep satisfaction of the creative work that our guts are calling us to. Anybody know what I'm talking about? I am preaching to myself. I am preaching to my people, and I am saying, forget the mustard. Take pride in forgetting the mustard, in leaving the laundry undone. Take pride in choosing the creation that is calling for you and that takes time. And more importantly, it takes the discomfort of wrestling with that silence, of sitting in that silence and of writing the shitty first draft, right? It takes that discomfort to get to the deeper, soul deep, cosmic wide satisfaction of doing your life's work. Preach it, Mary. The summer day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, the one who has flung herself out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention and how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Just letting that settle. Letting that question reverberate to all the places it must. Invitation, this poem from 1,000 Mornings, another recent book of hers. Oh, do you have the time to linger for just a little while out of your busy and very important day? For the goldfinches that have gathered in a field of thistles, for a musical battle to see who can sing the highest note or the lowest or the most expressive of mirth or the most tender. Their strong, blunt beaks drink the air as they strive melodiously, not for your sake and not for mine and not for the sake of winning, but for sheer delight and gratitude. Believe us, they say. It is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in the broken world. I beg of you, do not walk by without pausing to attend to this rather ridiculous performance. It could mean something. It could mean everything. It could be what Rilke meant when he wrote, "You must change your life." So much in that poem. It knocks me out what she can do with such simple language. I love the both and of that poem. It's a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in the broken world. Both and. Death, violence, brokenness, and many of her poems wrestle and observe and attend to the carnage of life and so celebrate the beauty that keeps breaking through, the grace that keeps breaking through. I'm recording this episode in Bali, which is just straight up paradise. The layers of its paradise, the just astonishing beauty of it. And 2 days ago, no, just yesterday, Easter morning, I woke up to the news of bombings in churches in Sri Lanka in what seems to be a very methodical act of massive bloodshed and violence and inhumanity, the likes of which is hard to even wrap our minds around. This intentional carnage on a day that celebrates resurrection and the sacred and all of the possibility and mystery of this world. And this poem is one of those lanterns for me, one of those ways of interpreting the complexity of the both and of our lives, right? The legitimate catastrophes, the legitimate fallings apart that break every part of us, and also alongside and not undoing, not interpreting any of that heartbreaking loss alongside the grace that can fill, that can heal, that can restore, that can knit back together, and in ways that can let in more light, more music, more art. Thank you, Mary. By the way, the last line in that poem, it could be what Rilke meant when he wrote, "You must change your life." I'm pretty sure is a quote from Rilke's little book, Letters to a Young Poet. If you don't know it, oh my goodness, you get yourself something good to drink and a Friday night with a clear calendar because it is such a gift. And it has, talk about a book that, again, gives you language, articulates the both and of life, the complexities, and asks you the juiciest questions. Ready for another? I am. The Swan. Did you too see it, drifting all night on the Black River? Did you see it in the morning, rising into the silvery air, an armful of white blossoms? A perfect commotion of silk and linen as it leaned into the bondage of its wings. A snowbank, a bank of lilies, biting the air with its black beak. Did you hear it fluting and whistling, a shrill, dark music, like the rain pelting the trees, like a waterfall knifing down the black ledges? And did you see it finally, just under the clouds? A white cross streaming across the sky, its feet like black leaves, its wings like the stretching light of the river. And did you feel it in your heart? How it pertained to everything? And have you too finally figured out what beauty is for? And have you changed your life? Let's stay in this vein of both and, of this refuge of language for complexity, with another poem called Everything That Was Broken. Everything that was broken now has forgotten its brokenness. I live now in a sky house. Through every window, the sun. Also your presence, our touching, our stories, earthy and holy both. How can this be? But it is. Every day has something in it whose name is forever. Another. This one's a list. 1. A mantra for my life. Endure. Just that. An axis I could revolve around as if the order of everything depends on my ability to dig in and on my chance that I buckle. I have weak knees to stay there and get to know the earth. 2. It's not just the one, of course, but you know this. The words you pull out in the dark. 3. These days, though, less is more, and yet more is more. 4. Maybe it's time to think, yield. Maybe it's time to say, surrender. In this poem, called Sometimes, it's another list. I like these alternatives to to-do lists. Maybe they're to-be lists. Because maybe we're human beings, not human doings. 1. Something came up out of the dark. It wasn't anything I had ever seen before. It wasn't an animal or a flower, unless it was both. Something came up out of the water, a head the size of a cat, but muddy and without ears. I don't know what God is. I don't know what death is. But I believe they have between them some fervent and necessary arrangement. 2. Sometimes melancholy leaves me breathless. 3. Water from the heavens, electricity from the source, both of them mad to create something, the lightning brighter than any flower, the thunder without a drowsy bone in its body. 4. Instructions for living a life. Pay attention. Be astonished. Tell about it. 5. 2 or 3 times in my life, I discovered love. Every time it seemed to solve everything. Each time it solved a great many things, but not everything. Yet left me as grateful as if it had indeed and thoroughly solved everything. 6. God, rest in my heart and fortify me. Take away my hunger for answers. Let the hours play upon my body like the hands of my beloved. Let the cat head appear again, the smallest of your mysteries, some cousin of my own wild blood, probably in the black dinner bowl of the pond. 7. Death waits for me, I know it, around one corner or another. This doesn't amuse me, neither does it frighten me. After the rain, I went back into the field of sunflowers. It was cool and I was anything but drowsy. I walked slowly and listened to the crazy roots in the drenched earth, laughing and growing. I love the prayers that are sort of woven in to that poem and woven out so that the line between just paying attention and devotion gets hazy, gets semi-permeable. So along those lines is this poem, Praying. It doesn't have to be the blue iris. It could be weeds in a vacant lot or a few small stones. Just pay attention. Then patch a few words together and don't try to make them elaborate. This isn't a contest, but the doorway into thanks and a silence in which another voice might speak. This next poem, called Today, which is from her collection 1,000 Mornings, is such a great expression of this open question that I'm wrestling and playing and dancing with in this podcast, which is the relationship between hustle and flow, the oscillation between hustle and flow in our lives. So again, this is called Today. I love thinking of it as a vision statement, as another kind of, instead of to-do list, a to-be list. Today I'm flying low and I'm not saying a word. I'm letting all the voodoos of ambition sleep. The world goes on as it must. The bees in the gardening rumbling a little, the fish leaping, the gnats getting eaten, and so forth. But I'm taking the day off, quiet as a feather. I hardly move, though really I'm traveling a terrific distance. Stillness, one of the doors into the temple. No words, y'all. I'm not going to ruin that one with any words. My favorite collection of Mary's is called Thirst. It's a book that came out at least 10 years ago. It's little. It is written in the throes of her beloved's wrestling match with cancer and Mary's own wrestling match with God through that, and her sort of surprising arrival into a kind of faith and a kind of prayer, which this poem is such an astonishing and wise expression of. It's called thirst. Another morning, and I wake with thirst for the goodness I do not have. I walk out into the pond, and all the way, God has given us such beautiful lessons. Oh Lord, I was never a quick scholar, but sulked and hunched over my books past the hour and the bell. Grant me, in your mercy, a little more time. Love for the earth and love for you are having such a long conversation in my heart. Who knows what will finally happen or where I will be sent, yet already I have given a great many things away, expecting to be told to pack nothing, except the prayers which, with this thirst, I am slowly learning. That line is such a great summary and introduction to all of Mary's work. Love for the earth and love for you are having such a long conversation in my heart. Also, such a beautiful expression of what a grounded, dirty, soiled, worldly expression of faith can sound like, right? What a spirituality of the earth and of this place and of this time might look like. So I will conclude with one last poem, which is so beautiful and also such a crown for Mary's life and prophetic in ways that we all sense given her passing. I hope you really let it generate within you. So as I thought about her passing and I thought about her legacy, I was really struck with how poetry, I know I'm reading poetry when the words themselves are generate. The words themselves are stirring up response in me, collaboration in me. And so the poem, in whatever shape it takes, maybe it takes the shape of a painting, of a song, of a novel, of a play, of whatever art form, a dance, the poem goes on creating. I know I'm in a poem when I feel it call to my own creativity, when I can feel it have that power over a collective, right? You've been at a concert and you can feel in the air when a song is stirring the creative power within everyone who is listening, that everyone there is kind of thinking about whatever it is that they work on, whatever their creations are. They're suddenly thinking bigger about them. They're suddenly impassioned toward them. This poem is called When Death Comes. When death comes like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and I look upon time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower as common as a field daisy and as singular, and each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending, as all music does, towards silence. And each body as a lion of courage and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say, all my life, I was a bride married to amazement. I was a bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I've made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. Big exhale. My friends, you are so invited to Mary's great work. And Mary, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for deciding not to care about the mustard. My friends, I cannot recommend her work more highly. You can treat it like kind of a tarot deck. You can treat it like the best kind of Russian roulette that explodes your heart in unexpected ways. Flip through any of her books and choose a poem and let it generate in you your own creative work, and go ignite your world. Much thanks to producer Chad Michael Snavely for his expertise in sonic tapestry. The theme song of this podcast is Becoming My Own Home, which is exactly the spirit of the nomadic belonging retreats I lead, now called Altar Journeys, cultivating a home within. The heart as wilderness and wellspring, regardless of where life takes us. It's by the band The Collection. Their music is smart, layered, and aching with joy. Check them out and find a link to the song on the show notes or the episode playlist on my Spotify channel. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can join the community at altartogether.com. Click the link Together to discover an expanding collection of rich resources to connect you to your heart and to a community of soulful adventurers. Exclusive guided meditations and movement practices, live online conversations, a book club that I'm really excited to lead, and early access to altar mentorship courses, events, and retreats, among other surprises. Creations to support your growth and your igniting work in the world. If you'd like to join the conversation and have a question or comment you'd like me to read and engage with in upcoming episodes, please go to the contact page on altartogether.com and leave an audio voicemail or send a message. I still look forward to hearing from and engaging with you. And if you're feeling especially generous, please leave a review for the podcast on iTunes, which helps others find it and this community. I'm grateful you're a part of it. My friends, let's altar together.
This year I'm becoming my own home. This year I'm becoming my